Hi, I'm Jared Reynolds. I'm a medical student at California University of Science and Medicine, School of Medicine, based out of Colton in the Inland Empire, so just out here in SoCal. I'm currently finishing up my 4th year and I just matched into general surgery, so super excited for that. I did my master's in biomedical science through Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine, and that's based out of Pennsylvania. And I did my undergrad here at Vanguard University, and I finished that all the way back in 2014. So a little on the older side, but grateful to have made it, and God is good. So here we are.
What kind of degree did you get?
I got my major was biology with an emphasis in pre-med. So
Awesome.
Vanguard, yeah.
Well, thank you. We can't wait to hear about you.
Of course, thank you.
And so essentially it allows me to take classes alongside the medical students and kind of just like show that I can, perform well and do well, and then hopefully get accepted into the next incoming class. And I feel like that was a really good path for me to take personally, because throughout the time he's being in this program, they really do like try to help their students and help their students like be successful, and so that like when we are full-time medical students at Georgetown, we're able to succeed and continue to do well. So I do feel like knowing more about postgrad programs or master's programs that have some type of linkage at medical school is something to like really look into. It was something I'm learning more about while I was in undergrad, and I'm glad that I have about the opportunity.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about that process. Another question that we had is, what is something that most people entering your career field may not know about the medical school application? You can speak a little bit more into the interview process. What does that look like for students?
I can just give a general overview for anyone who's unfamiliar. So, kind of going into your freshman year of Vanguard, I was like, I want to be a doctor, and I didn't know what that looked like. And I don't know if Dr. Miller said her. Dr. Miller gave me a little paper that had a list of the things I needed to do to get into medical school, and one of them is volunteering at a hospital. Doing volunteering things really kind of helps you to find your interest, and just to make sure you really do want to go in the medical field if you like being a patient. So one thing I would recommend is the Cone Health Scholars Program. For anyone who's familiar, at Hope Newport Beach, you can volunteer there, and it was a really great experience for me. You can try just doing things you're interested in, volunteer service, just trying to do things to show your interest in the medical field. And I think that applies to anyone who's nursing students. If you can, or pre-nursing, I would recommend trying to volunteer at the hospital there through the Cone Health Scholar Program. And then usually by your third or fourth year of Vanguard, or if you want to apply afterwards, you can always take a year off. You want to start studying for your MCAT. You do have to take certain basic science courses, biology, chemistry, physics, and then you take the MCAT. You want to try and make sure you do as well as you can on it, because it's a big swing factor to be able to open the door for you to get interviews and secondary applications. And then once you get your MCAT on your application submitted, I recommend again applying as soon as possible in June when it opens. And then after that, you would do secondary applications, essays, personal statements, and then you go through your interview process. So that's kind of like a big overview. And then I think I'll let you talk, and then if anyone has some questions about specifically the interview, what type of interview questions, I think that'll be later topic.
Yeah, totally. So I think she said it really well, where you definitely want to apply, like have your application ready, like basically in days, if not even weeks before, if you can, like personal statement, experiences, because you have to have like the summary of your experiences, why did it matter, transcripts ready, all that kind of stuff, just so that way, like as soon as the portal opens, you can submit right away. Because if you submit it like as soon as it opens, you kind of like along the same stack as everybody else. But even if you wait just a little bit, it's like you get that much further down the stack, and then it's much less likely that you'll be invited for an interview because they'll already filled their slots. So I definitely would recommend, definitely applying like as soon as the portal's open, whenever that is. And then in terms of MCAT, I think my big mistake was that I took like biology and OChem here, and I wasn't studying for MCAT at the same time. And so when it came time to studying for MCAT, I basically had to reteach myself like all the physics and all the chemistry. So what I would recommend, what really worked for me and helped me like score pretty well in my last attempt, was the Kaplan books. It's like I think it's 8 part, big books in the Kaplan MCAT study prep. And it goes over the physics, it goes over the OChem, the biochem, and I wish I had those like with me physically in the classroom, like studying as the teacher, like Dr. Miller, like he was my advisor too, because I was also pre-med here. During his biology class, or during Dr. Lawrence, is he still here? Okay, yeah, Dr. Lawrence. Yeah, just like for his organic, his chemistry class, like, having the Kaplan book. Why are you laughing? Because it's like, yeah, because you obviously want to do well in your classes, but you also don't want to have to go through learning all of it again for the sake of MCAT, because it's literally the exact same content. Like, there's nothing new. They're not trying to trick you. It's just you know it or you not. And so, I really wish I had done that. And then obviously, you know, just try to take your classes seriously. I also did a master's in biomedical science after going here, and for a lot of people, if it's a master's, it's post-bac, you know, you're doing it because maybe you didn't do so well during your undergrad as you might hope, and so you can save yourself a lot of headache and a lot of stress by just, you know, really trying to do well in your classes now. And then yeah, also try to get as much experience as you can. I worked as a medical scribe for a local ER by my house, and that was, you know, excellent because you're not only exposed to patients and how the doctors interview their patients and treat their patients, but you're practicing writing HPIs, filling out review systems, physical exam findings, all the stuff that you'll actually be doing, you know, as a medical student and as a physician. And it's a great experience to speak to during your interviews because you can say, I've already done this and this, you know, things I'll be doing as a medical student, things I'll be doing as a doctor, and it's for these reasons that I know I want to do this because I've already been exposed to it. And hopefully you will as well, and you'll have like letters of recommendation to people too, and so yeah.
Yeah, just to add on, I think it's something to really like realize is like going into medical school, like your medical school journey is like it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so like everyone's journey is gonna be entirely different. And personally, I feel like the main thing to focus on like being an undergrad here at Vanguard right now is like focus on like doing well in your classes. Like a higher GPA, doing well in your like is gonna really like mean a lot for you when you apply to medical school. Secondly, like they touched upon is like getting like experiences. And don't just like get the experiences, just like check off a box. Like make sure it's something you're actually like really interested in and something that you enjoy doing. So I actually did the Health Scholars program as well too, and I enjoyed that as well. But for that whole medical school application, you have to also do like, you know, some extracurricular activity. If you hope you can be able to get like leadership opportunity, that's also like, you know, another extra bonus on your application. But also like research as well too, that's something that you need to also, or some schools really advocate for students like have research opportunities as well on their application. So that's something to like kind of like look into. But don't just do these things just to like check off a box. Like make sure you're doing these things that like you genuinely enjoy, and find research that you genuinely enjoy as well. At Vanguard, there's a lot of opportunities to get research. I did the summer internship program where I was able to do research at UCI, and it was like really insightful opportunity, and I got paid for it as well too. So that's something to like look into and like find those resources that are available. And something like as a student, you have to really be proactive about like your education, like seek out the opportunities that you want. Because like even like when you do graduate from Vanguard as well too, like you have to like continue to like seek out opportunities even in med school as well. So just really being proactive, finding these resources, asking your professors, and like asking other people, you know, like what have they done in the past and things like that to make sure that you can succeed. I would say like with Kaplan series is really helpful. I know some people can even take and find like tutors to study for the MCAT if you have that resource available. But there's also like a lot of resources online that are free for like MCAT. That is like really the big thing when it comes to applying for medical schools, making sure you have like an MCAT score that the school typically accepts that you're looking into. So those are things to like really look into when it comes to application.
Question that I want to be able to kind of briefly talk about would be, how did you approach writing your personal statement to highlight those different experiences throughout your application?
Yeah, I think we've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but you know, at least for me, just to kind of reiterate again, I had the hurricane to kind of play into for my last round of applications, which was, you know, significant. And I even used the hurricane for my residency personal statement application. So I've been writing the same thing for a while, but for me, it was just kind of, I was able to use that to show like, you know, I'm a person who perseveres, I'm resilient, you know, I'm not someone who gives up, and especially not on my dreams. And then after that, I could talk about, again, like what we're already saying with like for me, I was working as a medical scribe before. I also worked as an ophthalmic technician, so doctors for the eyes. I also worked as a tech in that, which again, I was doing all the same things, taking the history, doing a physical exam, doing review of systems with the patients. Oftentimes, I'd actually do it myself first before the doctor even came in. So it's kind of like I was already acting in that role. And so for your personal statement, for my personal statement, I could say, you know, as an ophthalmic technician, you know, I really enjoyed the rapport that I would develop with my patients, you know, getting to ask them, you know, how are you doing, you know, how can we help you? And then again, I could talk about that during the interviews really well. So I think that, you know, like what, you know, Brittany and what we've been saying is just, you know, finding experiences that are incredibly meaningful. It doesn't even have to be, you know, necessarily like paid positions. It could be like we're talking about volunteering, just as many patient interactions as you can get, the better. And it could be maybe in a, you know, traumatic experience in your own life. You had a family member who had gone through something, or maybe you'd gone through something, and you got to kind of witness how like a doctor handled a specific situation, and you want to have that kind of influence on the lives of others, you know, in your own life. You know, it could be really anything that is meaningful to you, but you know, and then you're tying it to medicine and your why, you know, for wanting to become a physician.
And just, I guess, to talk a little bit about my personal statement, I remember having to write it, and I was very nervous because I didn't think I had a super impactful story or anything I could really share that was meaningful or moving in a certain way. And so I really just was very honest and told about my experience of wanting to go to medical school, and I incorporated those experiences that I did throughout Vanguard into the statement. So one of the things I talked about was volunteering at a homeless clinic. I did that for 2 or 3 years when I was at Vanguard. I did maybe like once or twice a month, and that was really impactful for me. Growing up in Oceanside, there's a huge homeless population, and I used to serve in high school just through my church, and then being able to do that in a medical sort of setting, and then also that helped me pair with some doctors who were in a family medicine residency who helped me to write a letter of recommendations. And so I was able to talk a little bit about the clinic experience I had, volunteering, and then I also recommend for anyone specifically applying to medical school to shadow a doctor if you can. If you want, I can talk to people later about tips for doing that, but that really helped me in my personal statement writing about why, because a lot of the questions you'll get asked at interviews, well, how do you know you want to be a doctor, not a PA, or an NP, or a nurse, or whatever else in the medical field. And so shadowing a doctor really helps to give you that perspective of, do I want to be a leader in the healthcare team, do I want to be able to be in full control of the patients and be able to write prescriptions, or do I want to be, you know, it kind of helps you differentiate that and help you for your interviews too. So I talked about shadowing and how I really enjoyed that, and I really solidified that I wanted to go to medical school, and then just my clinical experiences I had during my time at Vanguard. So,
Yeah, I agree with everything they're saying as well too. I think also with the personal statements, like as many eyes as you can get to like read your personal statement as well too is like also really helpful, because they might like create like better insight for you how to like even word certain things. So I was able to like have like Dr. Hannah read my personal statement, as well as some other professors and other like med students as well read my personal statement, just to like help me really like fine tune it, make it like something that I feel like I would want to like, you know, have on my application. And there's many avenues you can take with that essay. Like, you know, like the essay is really just trying for you to showcase like, why do you want to be a physician? And when you're answering that prompt, like you have to really show, not just tell, like why you want to be a physician. And so like when you're able to get these experiences like shadowing or volunteering or any meaningful experience that you can tie into like the characteristics that you see in a physician, the better. So that's why it is important to like get as many opportunities as you can in a medical setting or in a volunteering setting. That's what you ask them to talk about, to show like why you want to be a physician.
So I know so far you provided really great insight with your experiences. What do you wish you would have known before? Anything that you kind of stood out to you that you wish you would have known before as a student as you were applying? That you haven't shared so far?
I would say, like for me personally, like I feel like I knew like okay, I could do really good, like get really good grades, get really good experiences, like do research. I had all those things like checked off. But then when it came to studying for the MCAT, that was kind of where I felt like a little lost. Like I watched all the YouTube videos, but I'm still like, I mean, like how do I actually do this? But I would say like practice questions when it comes to like studying for the MCAT. And there's so many online that are free. You can buy practice questions from like the people who make the MCAT as well too. But if that's not a resource you have available to yourself, like do is like find as many as you can online and like take them very seriously. Like pick them as if like you are like taking the MCAT in like a real setting, and take as many as you can, but also like review them very thoroughly, so that like you know like how to like base off your studying. And I think also like going off my point earlier about like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like so everyone's journey into medicine is like entirely different. And like I feel like for me personally, I felt like the pressure, like I have to get into medical school right after undergrad, like you know, like keep it going, like can't take time off. But sometimes you really do need to take like a year or two and just like dedicate that to studying, and that because everyone's studying is different. And so I think when it came to like family and stuff, like trying to explain like okay, like yes, I know like some people can't get into medical school right out from undergrad, or maybe some people take a 1-year gap year. But everyone's journey is different. So if you can kind of like start kind of thinking like how you want that to look now, the better that is for you. And so just like really know like everyone's journey is different, but if you have the goal in mind, like I'm going to be a physician, I'm going to go to medical school, then however long it takes you to get there, there's nothing wrong with that. But what matters is like you're going to be a physician in the end.
It's very well said. I guess one thing I want to share just with anyone who's whether you're going to medical school or anything in the medical field in general, I want to say like if you feel like God has put a calling on your life to do something, He's going to fulfill that. So if anyone tries to discourage you and say, well, you didn't get an A in OChem, or you didn't get a good score in this, or whatever people try to tell you to say it's not going to work out for you or you can't do it, there's 100 stories or more that I know of people who have had maybe not the perfect application but have gotten in. And just trust God's promise for you that if He's going to call you to do something, just be faithful in that, and that He's going to do it for you. So it can be really stressful and overwhelming to go do these applications and feel like, is it going to work? Am I going to get in? Am I going to get, there's a lot of stress associated with it. So my encouragement to everyone is just to, if you're feeling worried or stressed about this situation, like pray about it, give it to the Lord, ask Him for guidance. Obviously seek wisdom and counselors, but I think there's something to be said about like having faith through the process and trusting God that He's going to do it for you. It only takes one school to get in, and I have friends that they only got one school that they applied to and they got in and they got it. So trust in the Lord, know that He's gonna be there with you, and He's gonna carry you guys through it.
I completely 100% agree, and I actually want to try to pull up a verse really quick right now that's come to mind, just because the fact that you guys are here and you're wanting to learn about the pathway to getting into medical school, like you're already like light years ahead of where I was when I was in your shoes. Because I was like, again, not studying MCAT, I wasn't really thinking about like experiences in medicine at all or research. I was just thinking, hey, being a doctor sounds really cool, so maybe I'll try to do that. But just to reiterate what she's saying in Philippians 2:13, it says, "For it is God who works in you both to will and to do for His good pleasure." So the fact that you're here right now and you're coming to a Christian university and you are Christians yourselves are willing is evidence that this is likely God putting something on your heart to do, right? Like go out into the community and give people better quality of lives, and do it by in the same time you're glorifying God in that. And so we have a huge advantage in that, like an invaluable advantage in that God really is looking out for us and our best interests and trying to help us get where we want to go. In the process, we're going to be glorifying Him. So that verse helped me think of that. And I remember even writing in my personal statement, like after the hurricane, my wife and I came back, and we just prayed. We took some time to really pray and think like, should we continue with this, international medical school, which is there's nothing wrong with going to an international medical school if that's the right path for you. But we just really, thought and prayed about it, and I didn't want to have to put my wife through that again, and so it's like I'm going to do everything I can to get into a U.S. med school. So I put that in my personal statement, and I really think, not that you guys all have to do that for yourselves, you have to do what you think is right for you, but I really do believe God honored that, because I got to go to CUSM. It's a newer school, and I actually got to open their first Christian medical group, so I think that it's a really cool opportunity. And obviously, not for my own glory, but for His glory. It's like, I'm sure that He would have brought along somebody else to do the job, in His own perfect timing, but, God really, is present with us. And, no matter how hard it seems as you're studying with Kat and you're studying your Dr. Lawrence Ocam, he's there in the classroom with you. And, as long as you're, trying your best to honor and glorify Him in what you do and pursuing Him in all you do, you'll definitely get there. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when.
I definitely want to be able to kind of open up for questions. If you have any specific questions that you would like to be able to ask.
I know that obviously like medical school is not cheap. How do you guys go about like obviously working about financials is also really important. How do you guys go about that with scholarships and challenges?
Good question. For anyone who didn't hear, she's asking about like the financial aspect of medical school and as expensive it is. So for me, I did Vanguard. I had the presidential scholarship, but I still had loans, and then I also did a master's, so I had more loans. So going into medical school, I knew it was also going to be expensive, so I was applying for scholarships. One of the ones I actually applied to is called the HPSB scholarship. I don't know if anyone's ever come to your campus and talked about it. It's basically a military scholarship where they will pay and give you a full ride for medical school, and then they also give you a stipend each month. And so if they do pay for 4 years of medical school, you would do 4 years at like, for me it's Army at an Army hospital. After I'm done with residency, I'm going to serve at a medical base for 4 years as an OBGYN. So that's something that I did that really took off a financial burden for school because it is expensive. But and there's also at my school, even if you were to do the full ride one, at Western University they have a lot of scholarship opportunities where you can apply for by writing essays. They send them out each year. I also got a $10,000 scholarship just by writing an essay, and so definitely apply for those essays and do things like that when you're in. Once you get in, I would recommend doing that. But even if you don't and you aren't able to get scholarships, they do. I don't know how it is with the undergrad loan, but I know for graduate loans, you can get enough loan money to help pay for rent, to help pay for food and housing and stuff like that. So that's actually covered in part of the loan. So you wouldn't have to worry necessarily about like cost of living and stuff like that. You'd be able to be a full-time student.
Yeah, my wife and I are trying. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Heritage.
Okay, you can go ahead.
I was just gonna say my wife and I are still kind of figuring that out for ourselves because we would have loved to do the HPSB. Like that's such a great scholarship, and I love the idea of giving back to your country and serving your country. But it's not for everybody. And my wife and I have young kids, and so the idea of getting deployed would be difficult. So yeah, that's a great opportunity. If you have good grades going in, you can maybe qualify for different scholarships through your medical school. I was very fortunate to get a couple of different scholarships that over time have basically paid for like a year more or less of tuition, and so that's been a big help. And then there's at least one school I know, and we were just talking about it, USIS, which is the United States University of Health Sciences, and so it's actually the military's like medical school based out of DC. And if you get accepted, you're basically commissioned as a captain like right out the gate, so you actually get paid to be a student, which is really cool. And again, that was super appealing to me, but for the wife and the kids, it would have been a challenge. So there are options. You just kind of have to dig deep for them, and like Rachel was saying, scholarship opportunities are constant all around. So
You'll be able to pay back as once you're a doctor. You'll be able to pay back all your loans. So
Yeah.
even if you don't, military's not for everyone. I'm not telling everyone to go serve or anything, but you'll be able to pay them. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, there's a lot of health like scholarships that are out there. So there's the National Health Scholarship Program, and that's for anyone who goes into kind of like primary care, and they have some other fields that are available as well too. But they'll also cover your medical school as well as give you like a stipend and every month as well too. You just like kind of guarantee that you're going to work either in a rural environment or in an underserved environment for how many years you get paid. Schools also offer scholarships as well. And then there's also the government. So as a physician or anyone really in healthcare, you're considered like someone working in public service. So if you work in a like government-funded hospital, the government will help like pay your loans as you also are like working in that place as well too. So like yes, they're going to be taking out loans, but there's also some like loan forgiveness that are help cover if you continue to pay like a certain minimum on that as well too. So I think just like do your research. There's also some medical schools out there that are also free. So if you get into those med schools, they're also going to like take care of that financial aspect as well too. But I think from my experience and like my experience like talking to mentors, yes, the loans seem very daunting and very like scary to like to kind of think about, okay, this is like almost like $100K to pay back that you've accumulated. But from what I've heard from my mentors, they've all said like, you know, paying it off is challenging, but it ends up happening and it goes pretty smoothly.
Any other questions?
I just want to know, like, while you're in medical school, like, what are you, like, expecting? Like, what would be, like, a daily, like, life, like, goal? Like, not for, like, I'm hearing a lot about, like, your research and how to pay for it, but what would I be expecting if I get into it?
What a day in the life of a student looks like.
Yeah, or, like, in medical school, like, a generalized thing.
Sure, I'll give you a little background. So your first years in medical school are like the pre-clinical years. So that's when you're doing all your classes. A lot of times for my school, we have a very intense curriculum. My school is like 8 hours a day of lectures, and it's very intense. Medical school requires a lot of hard work. I won't sugarcoat it. Like, you have to be very disciplined and work hard. And the first 2 years for me were very hard because you're studying constantly the analogies that you're drinking out of a fire hose. There's so much information. You really have to decipher what's the most important, what's getting tested. So I would say some days I would have maybe 4 hours of lecture, and then I'd have, time to go home and study. Sometimes I'd have in-person workshops, where we learn clinical skills. Sometimes it'd be twice a week we do clinical skills. I went to a DO school where we do OMM, so sometimes we have 3 days a week we get to practice hands-on manipulation, which I can talk more about that if you have questions about it. But first 2 years looks like preclinical. By the end of your second year, you take your first board exam, and then after your second year, your last 2 years are your clinical years, where you get to do rotations. It's the fun part. We get to actually do rotations in pediatrics, family medicine, internal medicine, OB, general surgery, orthopedic surgery, and that's for me. It was every 4 weeks I had a different rotation at a different hospital, got to get clinical experience, and then you would just take a test at the end of each month on that special exam on that topic. So I really enjoyed 3rd and 4th year because you get the clinical experience. But the first 2 years are really good to get the foundational knowledge. It's a lot of hard work, but you can, if you prioritize your time and are good at managing your time, it's doable, and you can still have a lot of free time and do fun things, spend time with family. Just have to be very good with time management.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the day-to-day is kind of determined by the medical school too. So like, you might have like lectures that are required for you to be in person for. You can have somebody that you like tune in virtually for. You'll probably have like clinical skills that you have to be in person for, obviously. And then like lab work, things like that. And the nice thing about CSM was that they actually didn't require us to be in person too much. This was also 4 years ago, towards the beginning of COVID. Or towards the end of COVID-ish, but like they were still doing virtual for a lot of stuff. That was nice. But they didn't really have too much in-person requirements. Like even now they don't, which is nice because it's like you can kind of determine like I do better by just learning by doing questions. So it's like rather than sit for a lecture that's probably not going to help me too much. I can go home and do my questions. I've been do Anki. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Anki and Anki cards. That's a really huge thing in medical school still. So it's like whatever works for you really is kind of, at least at CUSM, is what they do. And that's been nice for me. But yeah, same model though. First 2 years is your didactics, textbook studying, and then your last 2 years is clinical skills stuff. And it definitely does get more fun then because you're actually applying it. You're getting to work with patients, so it feels a whole lot more rewarding. And they actually really do consider you a part of the care team. The patients, but also your fellow medical students, residents, physicians. So you want to, try to know yourself and be on your A game as much as possible. But it's really great. It's super rewarding.
It's worth it.
Yeah,
Hard work is worth it.
I feel like you guys shared a pretty good schedule, what that kind of looks like. I would just say like it's really depending on the school. It really depends on the school you go to. Some schools have like the first 2 years set up differently. So I just would say like just look at like whatever schools you're really interested in. Like really look at like their schedules and they'll pop that on the website.
Question on this.
What made you guys choose MD over PA or any other like these? Some.
Sure, I can go first. I think for me, it really comes down to how much influence do you want to have over the patient's care. And so being a PA and an NP, like there's definitely nothing wrong with that. But you are kind of limited in the scope of like directing the patient's care. And based on my experiences, like you've been working as, years ago as a scribe, and more recently it's like they kind of, PAs and NPs, they have to kind of defer to the, the MD or the DO, whoever is really being in the patient's care. And for me, it's like I, just kind of wanted to assume the responsibility. Like this is my patient, I'm going to treat them like how I would want to treat my own family. If they came in to see me at the hospital or the clinic, wherever they may come. And then I also want to just have the knowledge too, like the knowledge and the skills to be able to provide that full spectrum of care. And that's actually why I decided to go general surgery, because not only do you have to have the knowledge, but I also have like the technical skills to treat them in the OR, if it's a trauma case or if it's a routine, lap appy, whatever it may be. And I love the idea that I'm kind of the one-stop shop. Like I can do most things, like not everything, but most things, the patient might need in an emergent or clinical setting. So yeah.
For me, I went in, when you go in medical school, you can match into any specialty. So there's so many different specialties you can go into. And I think for me, the idea of going into the specialty and being an expert in a certain field is appealing to me. I matched into OBGYN. That's not something I could really do as a PA or NP. Whereas if you are interested in primary care, say you want to do family medicine and see patients just like a primary care doctor, the scope is very similar between a PA, NP, and a DO, MD within the primary care setting. So let's say if you're interested in primary care, really look into NP versus PA because there are a lot more options for them to have. The scope is very similar. So if you know you want to do primary care, I would say look into the other fields too because it can be a shorter pathway. But as far as for me, I think I want to do a specialty. So you could also, for nursing, you could do, I don't know if there's a nursing program here, so I know my sister did the nursing program here. If anyone has questions about that, you can talk to me after. But she's a nurse at like a sub-ICU floor, but you can do nursing and then be an NP, and then you can also, there's so many different medical things you can do. You can be a midwife if you want to deliver babies and just do that. So I feel like I'm kind of going off the tangent, but there's so many different things in the healthcare field. You don't only have to, if you don't want to be a doctor, there's so many different other pathways. So I would say look into it. I had a friend who was a biology major and she decided to go be a perfusionist. I didn't even know what a perfusionist was when I was at Vanguard, but that's what she wanted to do. So you could be surgical technician, feel free to look into all the different options because there's a lot out there.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar answer to like for me wanting to be a physician was like to have autonomy and really make treatment plans for my patients, but also like to make that connection with them as well. I do feel like that's something that you like throughout your time in undergrad, like really identify like why do I want to be a physician and not an NP or not a PA? Because that is a question you're going to be asked like in interviews, and that's a question like you need to have like an answer like why not this? And so like when I had my interview, like that was a question I was asked like okay like why MD and not like PhD? And like those people who work in like labs, like they are creating like we're defining like new research ideas that can be used for treatment, but they don't have that hands-on patient interaction. And that was like my answer like why that over MD. So that's really like, kind of like how it's like okay, do I really want to be a physician, or with being a PA would that give me like enough fulfillment, or being perfusionist, you never know really. So those are things you also find out like through getting some like clinical exposure as well. So I do really like advocate for like finding some type of opportunity where you can work in a clinical setting, and the whole health college program is a really good experience because you really do get to like see all the people in the treatment team and see how they interact with the patients and see like their like scope of practice. And so that was a really good opportunity for me to get to the nurses, the PAs, the physicians, the NPs, even the charge nurses, and see what they do. And you're like, okay, like that's really cool. Maybe I don't want to do that, but I kind of interested in what the physicians do. And those are also really great opportunities to like make connections and meet mentors. Mentorship is like really, really important when it comes to like getting into medical school, like throughout your whole medical journey, because you never know who you'll meet and what type of insight and connections that they may have that can help you or propel you forward in this journey. So I would say like go like being in some type of situation where you're able to also like meet people and make connections is also a really great way to find out for sure if it would be sufficient.
When it comes to the longevity of like school, obviously for other grad programs and for like the medical field, it's very different. How do you go about like keeping that motivation of like I really want to do this? I know I still have like 4 more years, or you know, how do you keep that motivation, keep yourself going with like the same amount of same amount of effort as you did when you started?
Some days are harder than others, but I just take it one day at a time. I think I'm very type A. Like it's very easy for me to look forward to the future. I think even my first and second year of medical school, all I could think of was I can't wait till I get to be on rotations. I can't wait till I get to do this. And so it's good to have those things to look forward to. But what helped me the most really was like being present, taking it one day at a time, and say, okay, what is you can very easily get overwhelmed with the amount of tasks that you're swamped with. So just do the next good thing. Like do the next thing you need to do. So you might have a list of 50 things you need to do. What is the next thing I need to do? And just take it one step at a time. Just focus on completing that task. By the end of the day, you'll have gotten a lot done and be able to say, okay, I did my best, I worked hard. And so I think number one, keeping a relationship with the Lord has helped me the most get through medical school. I would not have gotten through medical school or even gotten into medical school if it wasn't for Jesus. Praise God. So keeping that at the forefront and making sure you're spending time with Him, because there's something about like He redeems time somehow. Because there's times that I don't have time to read my Bible because I need a minute stick for this task. But when I take the time to do it and pray, somehow I'm able to get things done way more efficiently and faster. It's like that. I don't know how, but really focus on like spend time with the Lord in your faith. Make sure to spend time with family. Do things you enjoy. You know, take a couple hours on a weekend to go play a sport or go do something you like. And I think scheduling, being really strict with your schedule and scheduling in free time is good. I think that just taking it one step at a time, putting Jesus first.
Yeah, definitely reiterate Jesus first always. You know, one day you will be in medical school if that's your dream. It'll be like you're saying by God's grace that you made it. And so just making that time to really stay connected with Him and just leaning on Him. You know, when you're taking if it's your finals or it's your shelves or one day you'll be it's called chiefing, but you're basically presenting patients and you're presenting patients to residents, to attendings, and you'll be super nervous because they'll probably rip you to shreds, but it's all just part of the learning process, and just having a faith like ours to lean on is again an invaluable resource. Like I can't tell you how many times I've prayed, you know, God, please just get me through this final, you know, please get me through this surgery that I'm scrubbing in for. And He's come through every time. He's not failed me, you know, not once. And so I think we can all attest to the same thing. And, so I definitely reiterate that. I would also say, as best as you can, and especially early, try to really find a community. So like within your program, I have no doubt, like, you know, you'll find people who have the interest like you do, if it's going outside, if it's hiking, or it's watching some of the same shows, or maybe you're extroverted, introverted, you know, it really doesn't matter. You're gonna find people and you'll find community, and just having each other to really lean on will be huge, because it will be likely that you guys don't like the same professors, or you don't like the same lectures, and you kind of joke about it. It's probably happening now, you know, but just having that community to lean on, and it's like, if you don't understand something, having a buddy to explain it to you so that it makes more sense, and then you can do that for your buddies as well. So yeah, I would say definitely those couple things, you know, continuing to lean on your faith, and finding community, and again, as early as possible, the better, just because like right away people will start forming their own little groups, and they'll start forming, you know, connections, and you know, if you're on the slower end to do that, then it might be kind of hard, but I mean, it'll always be possible, you know, like it's always possible. But I would definitely recommend it as best you can, trying to find a community, because that'll help the time to really fly.
Yeah, I agree with everything Lisa said. I would just add, I remember like when I was at Vanguard, I was like going through like a hard time, just like stress, because I was like volunteering and like working and like had exams or something coming out as well. And I was like telling my mom all this, and she was like, write down like your 10 reasons of like why you want to do this, like your 10 like why reasons. And like that's something like I refer to like whenever I'm having like a hard day at school, and like, okay, like why am I doing this? Like I'm so tired, so like you know that burnt out feeling of like this is just too much on my plate right now. And it's like, why are you doing this, you know? And for me, one of my big things is like wanting to be like an advocate of people like who look like me, because there's not many people, a lot of like me, minorities in medicine. And so that's one of my whys that keeps me going. Of knowing that like I can be an advocate for my patients who may like look like me and make me feel scared in the hospital. Like, I was like, so having that list of like, why am I doing this? This really does keep me propelled and keeps me going. I'm like, okay, just keep going, take it one step at a time. To-do lists help a lot. But I know this is like what's my highest priority and my lowest priority to keep you going. And I do strongly advocate for having community, having like not just like community at school, but also the community as well too. That really just keeps you going, and like just how we're going through very similar processes too.
What do you think was the best tool, resource that your undergrad, this school, given to you to prepare for the medical job? In all sense.
Like specific to Vanguard?
Yeah.
I think really leaning on your pre-med counselor, whoever that is. So I actually worked with Dr. Miller too, because I was a biology pre-med major, and I definitely didn't lean in as much as I should have, which is why it kind of took longer. You know, my story took longer to get into medical school. But I remember him, you know, reiterating things like, you know, you want to be that student that's studying like Friday night while your buddies are partying or doing whatever stuff. It's like you want to like, again, just take advantage now and do really well on your courses, really well in your coursework, so that you get your GPA up and you get your science GPA up, because medical schools will differentiate between the two. So you want to have a good GPA in all regards as best you can. And then yeah, just continuing to lean on your medical advisor, whoever that might be, because they'll steer you in the right direction. You know, like if it's studying for MCAT, you know, what tools or what resources are available, and then you kind of just discovering that for yourself. I think that would probably be mine.
That's a good answer. I was heavily involved when I was at Vanguard. I did Activate, I did BOD, I did SGA, I did a lot of leadership positions. I was very involved in the science clubs. So I think the involvement and the leadership positions I was in really helped prepare me well for medical school in terms of, I did a lot of interviews at Vanguard. You know, you guys do the interviews every year for like different positions. And that helped me for my medical school interviews, even my residency interviews. I think being in leadership positions or just being in different roles help grow you in different ways, give you a lot of life skills, better at communication, better at handling, you know, difficult conflicts. I think there's a lot of things just throughout being a college student that grows you and helps to prepare you for being an adult and later in life. So I would say the leadership positions probably grew me the most and helped me the most for that school, you know. And the classes obviously.
Yeah, I want to say, like, going to Vanguard, like, I'm very grateful that, like, Vanguard, you have very small classes. You know, you tend to have, like, the same professors for, like, your 4 years if you're, like, majoring in biology. And so I'd say, like, the connections you make with, like, professors, I think is, like, something that I greatly appreciate as I was at Vanguard. Because like, even now, I'm able to still message them and have, like, you know, update them, ask them for advice, for assistance. So I would say, like, the relationship with our professors greatly helped. And I would say, like, also, like, there's so many resources at Vanguard as well. And so I say, like, utilize those resources. Like, when I was trying to find a job, like, for my gap year, I utilized the career services and had them, like, help me do some, like, mock interviews. So I was like, okay, I have to get this job. And then that ended up going, like, really well for me. For me, like, the summer research program, which allowed me to, like, do an internship over the summer at UCI, like, that was a resource I had to, like, you know, like, apply for, but, like, seek it out, and it would really, like, greatly help me throughout, like, my medical journey, because I was able to get some research opportunity on my application. So I'd say, like, really, like, utilize the resources that they have at this school, and like, talk to your professors, make connections with them, and genuinely ask, like, for their advice and ask for their guidance, because they will be there, and they all, like, really do want you to succeed.
So, on behalf of everybody here, we are so thankful that you're able to come and join us and just be able to share a little bit more about your experiences. So this is great for students to be able to connect with you and then for them to learn be able to say thank you so much for coming in. And we do have a gift for you today for you to be able to take that with you as well. And then Parents Week will be sending yours also. So I'll probably connect with you so you can your address. I can be able to have that sent over to you as well. But thank you so much. If anyone has questions, you guys can talk to me after too.
Yeah,
I'm here.
totally.
I'm
You're
available.
here.